This video is my complete guide on making a member card in Photoshop. Links to free Photoshop downloads and member card PSDs, which you can learn from, are under the video in the description. So the first thing you need to do for your member card is to gather up some images. I'll show you how to make solid color backgrounds later, but you might want a scenic background or wallpaper to use in your member card. Search for some online so you can try them out in your card. You also might want some character renders so that you can drag them on top of your backgrounds. And I'll link you to some renders and scenic backgrounds under the video in the description. I also think it's a good idea to look at other people's member card designs so you can get inspiration for making your own member cards. I'll link you to some under the video as well. To start making the card, open up Photoshop and click on the Windows tab, and make sure you have the Tools and Layers windows checked as I do here. You'll use these a lot later. Now click on the File tab and click New, and choose the dimensions for your card. There's no perfect size. It should be rectangular though, and have a max width of 400 pixels, so that your card can fit most blogs side by side with other cards. But it's up to you. We can always resize the card later or crop it down. I will show you how to use those tools at the end of the video. Also, you can make a larger canvas like this if you feel you need more room to work with. If you're planning to have more creative borders with space around them like these, I think it's a good idea to give yourself more room to work with. As I said earlier, we can crop the card later or resize it. Now I'll start building the images in the cards. Drag your background images or wallpapers directly onto the canvas and resize and move them where you want. At any time, use Free Transform under Edit if you need to move and resize any image again. And move images in front of each other in the layer window here, or turn them off by clicking the eye next to them. For a basic colored background, follow these steps. Make a new layer as I do here, and move it behind the renders layer. Add a shape on top with the Shape tool. Then recolor the shape with this option. Or right-click the shape's layer and choose Blending option as I do here, and change the color with Color Overlay or Gradient Overlay. In the next step, I'll show you more options with coloring, including for the background. Here's an example of me using Free Transform on the render, which you might have to do later. Now I'll build the second card by dragging in the background and render on top. Later on we'll add borders around the render and then crop it down. So now we'll start recoloring the card's images. Many member cards use a variety of color effects, and you can do all those tricks too with these tips. First of all, you can right-click any layer in the layer window and choose Blending options, then Color Overlay and change it to Blend Mode Color. Now you can make that layer's image one color. You can also do this with the Gradient Overlay. For another color option, click the half menu icon on the bottom of the layer window and choose Hue Saturation for options that let you increase the color saturation or remove it so you can use monochrome on your card. Using this makes its own layer in the layer window, so you can move that between layers. This way you can make the background monochrome and your render another color. We can also use this paintbrush tool to make a different kind of multicolor background, as we will here. Just add a new layer and pick different color brushes with a large size and mix them together around the center or however you want to create a cool background color mix behind your render. You can also use colored paintbrushes over the render to change the colors there, but it's going to be a little tricky and you may have to experiment a lot. After I completed the card for this video, I found some good combinations which I'll show you here. Notice I put an aqua paintbrush over the bottom, and it's on its own layer, plus I have a yellow paintbrush over the light coming from her hand. That's also on its own layer. It's really important to have all these paintbrushes above the render on separate layers. This is so I can adjust them individually and also give them an opacity under 100% by right-clicking them and using the default blending option. Then I added a curves layer to adjust the contrast, and that helps a lot with the paintbrush layers over the character. I can also add a new layer and color fill it like I do here to add another color overlay to the render. I think this mixes well with the other renders. You can experiment and try out different colors for your ideal card colors. Here's another example where I added some color brushes on layers over the character and then used curves to change the contrast so those paintbrushes would look better. I can also add a gradient map on top too for more color changes, and you can add that through the half moon icon at the bottom here. I'll provide links to both of these card PSDs in the description so you can look at them yourself. Now that you have many ways to change the color, let me show you how to add special effects. We'll start with the paintbrush, which makes really professional looking light effects. The default paintbrush which we've been using makes great light orbs to interact with your render like I'll do here. I like to make them white colored and then add outer glow to them through the blending options. Since you're adding outer glow, you want the paintbrushes to be on their own layer. You can also download custom brushes to create unique light effects like I'll show you here. I put them on their own layer. Then you customize those layers with the paintbrush like any other layer, and also use free transform, the eraser tool, and blending options on that layer. I'll use the custom brushes to make it look like light is coming from her hand and also swirling around her. I also give the layers with the paintbrushes the same outer glow as the light orb so they all look the same too. Here's some sparkle brushes which I experimented with. I think the sparkles look good, but I want to focus on the light swirl, so I won't add them in the end. I'll link you to some custom brushes under the video, including the ones I used here. When you download them, they may be in RAR format. You can open those if you installed free app WinRAR and extract them just like this. Always drag the ABR file into Photoshop or double click on it and your brushes will be here. You might have to close the app and reopen it first before you see your brushes. While paintbrushes are really good for making special effects, you can also drag in special effect PNGs that you download online onto your canvas. Just search for them online, download them, and I'll link you to some under the video. We've used blending options a little, but you should fully explore using them on all of your image layers. You'll have to experiment. You can add glows, shadowing, and other effects. Just right-click a layer and choose blending options. One trick I like to do to create a glowing weapon is to make a duplicate of the layer, then remove the original layer from view by clicking the eye next to it in the layer window, and then I erase everything other than the weapon. Then we add a glow to it with blending options and turn the original layer back on. So now it looks like the weapon is glowing. We can do this with any part of an image layer like a render or a background. The easiest way you can add text is with the text tool. The options to change it are at the top of the app. And afterwards you can customize the text further with blending options. Just right-click the text layer and choose blending options. If you really can't make text you're satisfied with in Photoshop, then as an alternative you can generate text at cooltext.com and drag that into the canvas. It can also be resized and customized with blending options like any other image layer. Adding a border isn't necessary, but it's important to a lot of member cards. The simplest way to add a simple border that won't affect the rest of your card is to activate your Shape tool and draw a rectangular shape over the entire card. Make sure it's at the top of the layer window above all other layers. Set the color to transparent through the options up here. Now right-click the Shapes layer and activate Blending Options. Use the Stroke option set to the inside or use the Inner Shadow and Inner Glow options to add a simple line border to the card. You can choose the colors too. You can later adjust the border with free transform on the shapes layer. You can also use this layer with a color overlay that will affect the entire card. Also, you can move the entire card to a shape so that you can add borders, transparent space, and even rounded corners this way. Go to the Shape tool and choose your shape like here. We'll choose Rounded Rectangle. Now place the shape over the card and make sure there's a color for the shape with the option at the top. Now move that shape's layer to the bottom of the layer window and then apply clipping masks to each layer above it. Right-click the layers and choose Clipping Mask. This will clip all the images and effects to the rounded rectangle. Now you can add blending options to the shapes layer as I do here. It's a good idea to add stroke and shadow as well. You can do this with any shape type. Just right-click your shape tool for more shape options. You can set more complicated borders with the Pen tool, but first we have to go to the View tab and set up some guides. We can make a typical rectangular border, but we can also add angle corners with the Pen tool. Click the points where you want your corners at for your border. Don't hold and drag the pen, just click the points where you want corners. Use the guides to make them aligned with each other. When done, make sure this new shape you made has a color with the option up here. Don't use the transparent option, which I've X'd out. Afterwards, you can add color overlay and other blending options to your border. Now that was a border that filled the borders of the card, but there are some card borders that have transparent space around them and are also angular. Here's how you make those borders. You'll have to set guides again and use the pen tool. We're going to make two shapes with the pen tool. One will be for the outside of the border and one for the inside. The red shape is the inside of the border. We're going to attach all of the graphics of the card to the red shape with the clipping masks and the move tool. Now we customize the outside border with blending options. We can also use clipping mask on any images we want to add to it. For instance, I found a large wooden graphic online, which I want to clip to the border to give it a wooden look. Now let's say you want to fix one of the shapes to adjust the corners. It's easy to just make a new shape with the pen tool again and replace the old one with it. Use your guidelines under view to help align everything perfectly. You can also copy a shape containing your borders and then resize it with free transform to make new borders for the inside. Now I'm going to make some last minute changes and save the graphics. To save the PSD, which will save all your work so you can work on it again later, just click File and Save As, then save as type PSD. To export your card so you can upload the images to your clubs, you need to click on File and Save As type PNG as I do here. There's probably a lot of different styles and color versions for your card, which you can export, so you might want to ask your club members what kind they like best or let them choose from different versions of your card. Also, for the cards with the large canvas, before exporting it, we want to crop it down. Use the crop tool here. You can also resize a card that's too large with the image size option here. And lastly, now that the card is finished, you might want to add a pattern overlay to give it some texture. So good luck on your cards, and if you have any questions, ask us in the club linked below. You can also show off your member cards or open up your own member card shops if you ask our approval first.